Hey everyone, how's it going? So I was just thinking here, creating content for us, for you, to think through this, and I was like, well, what if I can, well, let's take one step back. One of the problems in different classes we have is, let's say, multiple choice questions. And within those multiple choice questions, one of the key problems that I as an educator deal with is if they exist in my course, just when they get out and when students see them, and basically just questions that students just start to see term after term, and then you just have to keep it fresh and new. You don't have to, but then hopefully you want to have credible students leaving your course. But anyways, I was like, well, with ChatGPT, we can definitely, there are many ways we can do this, but the one way for this specific video, I'm going to try and create a multiple choice question generator. Now, this video, sometimes the videos I have are scripted a bit. I try to keep the production value low so I can create content that's valuable and easy for me to create. So I'm going to do this, think on the fly. You're going to go through the logic, bear with me. I don't know how long this video will be, but basically my goal by the end of this is to create a multiple choice question generator. So all we have to do is put in, let's say, the topic, the amount of questions, the difficulty of the questions, and then it will create multiple choice questions for us, and it will at least give you the concept of how we can do this. So let's start a new conversation with chat here, and go from there. So I'm just gonna click new conversation, and let's walk through this. So anytime I do anything with ChatGPT, if you have an idea of what you want to create, you got to think, how do I get there? How do I get to that point? Because I could easily just say create 15 multiple choice questions. You can easily do that, but if we hit enter, we'll see what chat does. But the problem is the context. There's no context. Chat's choosing all different answers for all different questions whenever it wants. So the more we can focus ChatGPT on what we're looking for, the better it is. So I'm going to delete that conversation because chat did what we asked. ChatGPT gave us multiple choice questions. It chose how many to give us. It chose the amount of answers to give us, and so on. And the point of explaining this is I want to just help frame your mind when you're working with this tool. It can be amazingly productive and a time saver for us, but it could also waste a lot of time if you're not knowing how to specifically connect with it in a way that you're asking the right questions. Can I say connect with it? It's not a real thing. It's just an algorithm. So let's say not connect with it, but let's say interact with it in a way where you can extract valuable data. So let's go back into this concept of, okay, my goal is to create a multiple choice question generator. So in order to get that generator to be set up the way I'm looking for it, I want to first establish what a multiple choice question is, what goes into really well-written multiple choice questions, what goes into challenging multiple choice questions, what goes into multiple choice questions that are critical thinking questions. And then once we sort of establish that lineage of thought, then we can start to go into topical elements and so on. So let's go through this. Let's say, what is a multiple choice question? I know what it is, but I want to see what chat comes up with. So a multiple choice question is a type of question that presents several options or choices, usually in a list, and asks the respondent to select one or more of those options. Okay, good. So we already know this, but remember, we're training ChatGPT. So anytime you work with ChatGPT, the more you can train it and focus it, the better your responses will be. So we've got, what is a multiple choice question? I'm going to say now, I'm asking questions to learn, but also to guide chat. So what are common types of multiple choice questions? What are common types of multiple choice questions that are challenging for students? And we'll see what ChatGPT comes up with. So there are several types of multiple choice questions that can be challenging for students depending on the subject and the level of complexity of the material being tested. Some of the most common ones are negative or double negative questions. I would have never thought of that. Interesting. Ambiguous or vague questions, complex or convoluted questions, similar or closely related questions, multiple correct answers. Oh, that's an interesting way. And so on. Okay, so chat gave us 5 types of questions that can be considered challenging for students. So the question I want to first establish and learn now is, based on these 5 types, what ones in order, not good wording, but let's just leave it and see what chat does. So based on these 5 types of questions, what ones in order are the best for testing a student's creativity and critical thinking skills? Because as an educator, I don't want to see regurgitation. I don't want to see a student just regurgitate answers. That to me is meaningless. That is absolutely no value, because we're not just regurgitating concepts. When they go to the real working world, they're going to have to adapt. They're going to have to critically think. They're going to have to problem solve. So if we're doing multiple choice questions, that's a whole different question of why do we even use them, right? But let's go back into, if we're going to use multiple choice questions, how can we set them up in such a way that is not an easy response for students where, oh, I know the answer. It's, how do you think through to get the correct answer so I can understand your logic and your thinking? Do you really understand the concept? All right, so out of the 5 types of multiple choice questions listed, the ones that are best for testing a student's creativity and critical thinking skills are ambiguous or vague questions and complex or convoluted questions. Okay, so ambiguous or vague questions require students to use their critical thinking skills to analyze and interpret the question, as well as their creativity to come up with possible solutions or answers. These types of questions challenge students to think beyond the obvious and consider multiple perspectives and possibilities. Okay, complex or convoluted questions do this and that. So therefore, the order from the best to worst for testing students' creativity and critical thinking skills should be ambiguous or vague questions, complex or convoluted questions, negative or double and negative questions, similar. Okay, good. So this is good, because the goal I'm trying to do is not just to eventually create a generator that creates these types of questions, so I can have an unlimited supply of multiple choice questions, but to focus chat to understand, hey, when I'm asking for challenging questions, it will then choose ambiguous ones to be first, or whatever that is, so that we're not creating a yes or no answer. We're creating an answer that there's the most correct answer and the least correct answer. So it really challenges the students really understand the logic and the thinking behind this. I want students to think. I want students to show me and prove their knowledge, not just to say I'm a calculator or I'm a memory bank of responses. That, like I said, it's irrelevant to me. That's not important. Otherwise, this is a meaningless task. So let's continue with this thought. So now we sort of established what a multiple choice question is. We've established types of challenging questions for students to think critically and creatively. We've gone through and had chat based off this. We could say give us 10, and it would do that. So now we've sort of clarified a bit the concept of what ones are most challenging for students to think creatively and critically think. So now we established a few things. I'm going to say, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to say based on logic and statistics, I'll explain this in a moment. What is the ideal length of a question? What's the ideal length of a question? What is the ideal number of possible answers? And what is the ideal amount of questions I should ask I'm going to rephrase that. What is the amount of questions a student can answer to properly assess their understanding and ability to prove their ownership is the wrong word. Prove their depth, ownership. No, what's the word? I'll just use the word prove their mastery of the topic at hand. So what I'm doing by asking this question is, and I haven't set these questions up, so I'm thinking through this on the fly. There has to be statistics somewhere that people have done studies on this, and that's what I'm hopefully going to tie into. And also, is there an ideal length for a question? Is it one paragraph? Is it 2 sentences? Is it 1 sentence? Is it structured sentences? What's the ideal number of possible answers? So is it 4 answers, 3 answers, 5 answers? And obviously, what's the ideal amount of questions? How many questions, once we have this set up, how many questions, if there is a study or anything that's covered this, how many questions would a student need to respond to that would give me a solid idea if they truly understand what they're saying or what they're being tested on? So that's the logic I had behind asking those questions. So let's see what ChatGPT says. So the ideal length of a question, so it's restating it. Okay, cool. So the ideal length of a question. So questions should be clear and concise and easy to understand. In general, a question should be no longer than 2 or 3 sentences. Longer questions may lead to confusion or misleading or misunderstandings. Okay, so no more than 2 to 3 sentences. We can create that. The ideal number of possible answers. Questions should have a sufficient number of answer options to provide a challenge to the student, but not too many because it becomes overwhelming or confusing. In general, 3 to 5 answer options are considered ideal. Fewer than 3 options may be too easy. More than 5 increase the likelihood of guessing or leading to confusion. Okay, so now chat saying it should be around 2 to 3 sentences in length for a question, if you can. No more than I'm going to guess 4 to 5 questions or answers is logical. And also the amount of questions, the number of questions required to assess a student's understanding and ability to prove their mastery of the topic at hand can depend on the level of the student and the complexity of the topic. Okay, so however, in general, a sufficient number of questions is required to ensure the assessment and the reliability and being valid. Studies have shown at a minimum of 10 to 15 questions is required to achieve a reliable estimate of a student's knowledge. Okay, so in conclusion, the ideal length of a question should be no longer than 2 to 3 sentences. The ideal or the number of answers should be 3 to 5, and the ideal amount of questions depends on the complexity of the topic, but between 10 to 15. So this is good. So for one, this is my learning because I'm trusting there's an element. ChatGPT's data knowledge is so vast that, and yes, it has its own biases and perspectives, but at least it's so vast that I can at least refine it and I can get understanding for myself. And if I really wanted to, I would dive into, try to find those studies if I really wanted to know the DNA of assessing within multiple choice questions. But anyways, back to our point. Our goal is to try to create a multiple choice question generator where all we have to put in is the topic. Now, obviously, the more specificity, the better it is. But for this example's sake, to show you can do this is so that we have to put in the topic, the amount of questions, and the complexity or the difficulty. So we've at least trained ChatGPT in this conversation to understand what it is, multiple choice questions, how hard they can be, the breakdown, the complexity, and other things that are important. So I think we can start to craft the way ChatGPT needs to think within creating questions for us, at least at this level. And hopefully this is not too complex. The whole point behind this video is to show you the possibility of what we can do. And if you're like, Matt, I don't want a generator, I don't want to do this, then you can actually take existing questions you have, put them in and say, rephrase them, reword them, give me variations. You can do it much in a different way. I'm just trying to show one way we potentially could generate unlimited questions that are different every single term. So our students are truly being assessed and there's no duplication and all that fun stuff. So back to my point, let's go and actually dive into starting to craft how this works. So I'm going to think on the fly. So this is not structured, but let's think through this. So now that we have this set, I want you to act as my multiple choice, my multiple choice question generator, where I will give you 3 inputs: topic, number of questions to create, level of difficulty, and level, let's say and level of difficulty. We don't have to say and, but it's going to help. And a level of difficulty like this. And you always want to give an example. I'm going to always go back to my roots of marketing. The number of questions would be, let's just say 15 questions, and level of difficulty is very difficult. Okay. Like this, when I give you the inputs, you will create what I have asked, and then give me corresponding questions. So what I want ChatGPT to do is, when it gives me the questions, it also gives me the answers, and give me the answers for those questions. Then you will give me 5 questions that you create that are designed to guide me to further improve or modify the questions generated as and so less ambiguous language, so more direct language. And I want to have you create an advanced prompt that will take into consideration what I have input. We'll see what chat does. Now, there are ways that we can think through this and craft this better, but basically I want you to act as my multiple choice question generator, where I will give you 3 inputs: topic, number of questions to create, and level of difficulty. Like this: marketing 15, difficult, very difficult. When I give you the inputs, you will create what I have asked and then give me the answers to those questions. Then you will give me 5 questions that you create that are designed to guide me to further improve or modify the questions generated. And I want you, I want to have you create an advanced prompt that will take into consideration what I have input. So we'll see what happens. So we've done a lot of prepping. If you're still with me watching the video, amazing. You actually are interested in this. And how this might work. This will work. I just have to think of the structure and how we do this. Okay, so chat did something different here, and we got to figure this out. Okay, so chat basically said, "I'm sorry, as a language model, I'm not able to create quizzes or generate specific multiple choice questions." Yes, it can, but we have to give it some context. So, however, I can give you some general tips for creating multiple choice questions. So here are tips it's giving us. And here are 5 questions designed to guide you further. So are these questions clearly and free? Okay. And create fit. And so this is interesting. So what chat did was it didn't create multiple choice questions. Like, it shows that it needs to have a bit more guidance to create them. But what it did though was it gave me a prompt. I said, I want you to give me an advanced prompt. So it said, and here's the prompt: create 15 multiple choice questions on the topic of marketing at a very difficult level of difficulty. Ensure the questions are clear, concise, avoid ambiguity, double negatives. No, we don't want to avoid double negatives and ambiguity. We want those to be challenging. But let's just leave this. I'm going to copy this. This is a prompt chat's given us. And we're going to go here and put it in and see what ChatGPT does. There we go. So it does. Okay, perfect. It does create what we wanted. It just didn't create it in the context of how I was thinking. So let me try this again. So if in this context, this is the critical thinking and the problem solving and the ways to think through this. So what ChatGPT did was it said, I wanted chat to give me 15 multiple choice questions based off the fact that I could type in business 10 easy. The idea was that it would create multiple choice. Oh, so it did do it. So I'm wondering what the context in that one moment was, because right now all I did was I gave it a topic, the amount of questions, and the difficulty, and it's creating questions for me. Obviously, the questions are irrelevant to a class because we haven't given specific context, but it's giving the answers. Awesome. So it did do what I want, but maybe it was a bit confused and I wasn't very clear on how it needed to do things. Because if I want to sort of salvage this video and this conversation for you, I'm going to reframe this and reframe it so that instead of ChatGPT giving me the questions in this conversation, I'm going to have it create a prompt that I can then bring to another conversation, and it will do that. And all I'll have to do here is give the topic, the amount of questions, and the difficulty. So I'm going to change this. Say, I want you to act as my multiple choice question prompt generator, where I will give you 3. So there we go. So the whole point now is not that it's going to give me multiple choice questions, that chat will give me a prompt that I can put in. And the whole idea is that if it does this correctly, all I'll have to do are put in 3 different inputs. And that's okay. Chat's saying I can't do this, but it actually can. So it's going to give some insights, which I think it might have done already before. That's fine. But it did give me a prompt, which is the same prompt as before. So if I go back here to the question and put this back into ChatGPT, it's going to create multiple choice questions and the answer and the explanation of the answer. So that's the whole point. We wanted it to create multiple choice questions for us. So it's going to create 15 questions, and it did tap out, meaning it timed out. I'm not too worried about that, but I'm going to go back to my generator here. And that means that with my generator, we'll see what happens now. I should only be able to put in the topic, the amount of questions, and the difficulty, and it should create a prompt for me. And that is the prompt that I want to use. So I'm going to go back here and say, go fashion, because it's not my realm of anything. 10 questions and very difficult. And we'll see what ChatGPT does. So it's going to give us, okay, so it's going back to giving us multiple choice questions. Okay. It's going to give us 10 multiple choice questions that are very difficult. Now, what is the context of very difficult? If you're still with me watching this video, you're learning that it's not a perfect system. And the more we can learn how to communicate with ChatGPT, the better it is. Now, this way, I will refine this and fix this way for us to get chat to do what I want. Maybe a generator is not the best thing to think of. But let's just take these questions. So let's just pretend. So I'm going to take this and let's just pretend that I have these questions from, here we go. So let's just say this is a part of my test. So let's sort of now refocus our mindset here, saying there's a way to create a generator. It almost did what I want. I have to refine that and clean that up. The beauty of a live assessment or a live tutorial, thinking through that, it shows you it's not perfect, nor am I in the process. But let's reclaim this, and I'm going to show you a different way to do this. So let's just say these are my actual questions. So these are my actual questions for a multiple choice test, okay? And what we can do is this. We can actually go into ChatGPT and just copy and paste our answers, our actual multiple choice questions, and these are based off fashion at a very difficult level. So I'm just going to put these in, and chat will give me a response saying, hey, thank you for providing questions and answers. Is there anything else I can assist you with? This is where we can start to adapt and modify things. I can say, hey, I need you to create 10 new questions that are in the same topic, but harder. Now, it's going to create 10 new questions for me that are different, that are apparently harder. But the idea, though, is it's creating new questions. Now, for you as an educator, if you're thinking, well, wait a second, how does this apply to me? Well, if you've got your previous questions and answers from before, you can copy and paste those questions and put them in the ChatGPT and say, hey, here's within my topic, create for me 15 new ones or 20 new ones or whatever, and it will do that. And even just in that context, it's definitely easier, but you can then create unlimited questions and answers for multiple choice questions that you can then take that are usable, that as long as you go through and read through and double check, make sure they make sense to what you're teaching and what you're assessing, ChatGPT will then create this for you. And let's say you have a time where ChatGPT stops and times out. You can say, you can just say continue from where you left off. And it should be able to continue from exactly where it left off. That's one of the things. So yeah, so it started at number 1. It is number 9. We set it to do 10 new ones, but now it created 10 new questions. So now we put in our original questions, right? And we said, hey, we've got this from previous term, and create for me 10 new questions. And now we can say, hey, create for me 10 new questions that are focused on, let's choose one specific thing. What is the difference between a smoking jacket and a blazer? Now, I have no idea about this, but I'm going to see if chat can create 10 new multiple choice questions for me that are focused on just this one specific question. And we'll see what it does. Now, I'm not a fashion expert. As you can see me, I'm not a fashion expert. But the point behind this whole thing, this whole tutorial, live demonstration video, is to show you ways we can utilize ChatGPT. And it just created 10 new multiple choice questions around the specific concept of a smoking jacket and a blazer, the difference between it. And it created questions for me. Now, if I was a fashion person, I would go through and I would have to know. But you can sort of see the simplicity with which you can create new versions. So hopefully this was a helpful tutorial. It didn't go exactly the way I wanted, meaning I'm going to create another one. I'm going to go through and define and clean this up where I do create a generator, because it did what I want, but not 100%, and it wasn't exactly clear, and that's my mistake. But at least I've definitely learned. I'm going to copy part of this conversation, because if I do multiple choice questions, I want to make sure that they focus on what is challenging for students and has students critically think. And I will definitely copy this conversation and repaste into the ChatGPT when I do create those questions, because it will refocus it to understand I don't just want simple regurgitative question answers. I want challenging ones that students have to critically think and think outside the box and be creative. And this has done a lot of good stuff. So not the tutorial ending the way I'd hoped, but still showing you how you can create unlimited multiple choice questions, and how we can dive into it and just play with this tool. It's amazing. Hopefully this is helpful, inspiring in some way, not scary, but we can do a lot of stuff with it as educators, and hopefully authentically assess our students in a way that's meaningful for them and for us, so it's not a waste. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for sticking around for this very long video, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.